Picture this. The world as we know it has crumbled. The conveniences we once took for granted, electricity, running water, grocery stores stocked with food, are gone. Fear and desperation are the new normal, and the social fabric that held everything together is starting to tear apart at the seams. You're no longer just trying to thrive, you're struggling to survive. People around you, even those who were once your neighbors and friends, are now potential threats, each facing their own battle for survival. In this environment, tensions will flare, conflicts will arise, and how you handle those situations could mean the difference between life and death. In a post-collapse world, everyone is under extreme stress. It's important to understand that people don't behave the same way they did before the crisis. What happens when fear, hunger, and uncertainty become constant companions? People shift into survival mode. Psychologically, this means they're far more likely to experience anxiety, paranoia, and aggression, all of which can escalate small misunderstandings into full-blown conflicts. Research shows that in the early stages of a crisis, most people cooperate to get through the initial shock. But as time passes and resources grow scarce, survival instincts start to override logical thinking. The brain's fight-or-flight response kicks in, leading to heightened emotions and often irrational behavior. Imagine someone cutting in line to get water. Before the collapse, you'd probably brush it off or ask them to move politely. But in a post-collapse world, that one action might be seen as an attack on your survival. It's not just about water anymore, it's about life and death. Understanding this psychological shift is crucial for recognizing when conflict is about to escalate. That's why knowing how to de-escalate tense situations is an essential survival skill. Most people, even in the best of times, don't react well when they're stressed. But in a crisis, these reactions can become volatile, sometimes even violent. Your ability to navigate these situations calmly will not only keep you safe, but could save the lives of those around you. One of the biggest conflict triggers in any collapse scenario is resource scarcity. When food, water, medicine, or other essentials become hard to come by, people will act out of desperation. Even someone who was once your ally may become your competitor if their survival is on the line. The simple truth is that when resources dwindle, the value people place on them increases exponentially. A bag of rice could spark a deadly dispute if the person who needs it believes their life depends on it. Resource scarcity often leads to hoarding, which then fuels mistrust and paranoia. People start to wonder if others are keeping extra food or water hidden away. And this suspicion can quickly escalate into accusations or even physical confrontations. The psychological pressure of not knowing if you'll have enough to eat or drink tomorrow makes every interaction potentially explosive. But resource conflicts don't have to happen. If you're in a group, one of the best ways to avoid these kinds of disputes is to set up a transparent system for rationing. Let everyone know how much food and water is available and make sure the distribution is fair. People are less likely to get aggressive if they believe the system is equitable. Regular communication about the group's resources helps maintain trust, and trust is key in preventing conflict from flaring up. While it's easy to focus on external resources like food and water, internal resources, like mental health, are just as important and can be a major conflict trigger. In a long-term survival situation, the psychological toll on group members becomes more pronounced. People are tired, they're scared, and they've been running on adrenaline for far too long. This leads to a breakdown in emotional resilience. When mental health starts to decline, so does the ability to handle stress and conflict rationally. Exhaustion only makes things worse. Imagine trying to make life or death decisions when you haven't slept properly in weeks. Your ability to think clearly, react calmly, and manage your emotions diminishes. People start snapping over minor issues. The smallest perceived slight can set someone off, and before you know it, a conflict has escalated into something much more dangerous. To prevent exhaustion and burnout from leading to conflict, prioritize rest and mental well-being. In a group setting, rotate responsibilities so that no one is overburdened. Ensure everyone gets enough downtime, even if it's just a few hours of quiet. Encourage group members to talk about their mental state. Sometimes, just having an outlet for stress can prevent it from building into something more explosive. A well-organized system for resource management can prevent a lot of the conflicts that arise from scarcity. Transparency is key here. If people feel that resources are being hoarded or distributed unfairly, tensions will rise quickly. This applies to everything from food and water to medical supplies and shelter. One effective strategy is to establish a resource-sharing system where everyone contributes and receives their fair share. The more you can create a sense of mutual benefit, the less likely people are to start competing over resources. Fairness must be the foundation of your approach. If someone feels they're being shortchanged, they're likely to become resentful, and that resentment can easily turn into open conflict. Another important aspect of resource management is planning ahead. If your group or family knows what they have and how long it will last, they're less likely to panic when things start to run low. Panicking leads to rash decisions, and rash decisions often lead to conflict. By planning for the long haul and keeping everyone informed, you can keep tempers in check and avoid unnecessary confrontations. Trust is perhaps the most important element of any group dynamic in a survival scenario. Without trust, paranoia can take root, and that's when things really start to unravel. Mistrust turns allies into enemies and can escalate even minor disagreements into major conflicts. To prevent mistrust from creeping in, open and honest communication is essential. If someone has a concern, it's better to address it directly than let it fester. In the high-pressure environment of a post-collapse world, small doubts can grow into dangerous suspicions if left unchecked. When people don't trust each other, every interaction becomes a potential conflict. Building trust in a survival group isn't just about being open with your words, it's about being consistent with your actions. If you say you're going to do something, do it. If you promise to share resources, follow through. The more reliable you are, the more trust you'll build within the group. And in a world where trust is fragile, it's something you can't afford to lose. Now, let's talk about group dynamics. In any group, especially in high-stress situations, there's always the potential for power struggles. Who's in charge? Who makes the decisions? In normal circumstances, these questions might be resolved through discussion, compromise, or even voting. But in a survival scenario, power struggles can escalate quickly. When the stakes are high, people are less willing to compromise, and that can lead to serious conflict. Someone might feel that they should be the leader because of their skills or experience, while another person might think they're more qualified. This kind of tension can fracture a group, especially if there's no clear system in place for making decisions. One way to prevent power struggles is to establish leadership roles early on. Whether you're in a family unit or a larger survival group, having a clear chain of command helps prevent disputes over who's in charge. But leadership doesn't have to be permanent. Rotating leadership roles based on the situation or skill set needed at the time can also help balance power and prevent resentment from building. In a post-collapse world, people will start to claim territory. Whether it's farmland, water sources, or shelter, the instinct to protect what's yours will be strong. Unfortunately, this territorial mindset can also lead to conflict, especially when boundaries are unclear or people feel their space is being encroached upon. Territorial disputes are especially dangerous because they can turn violent very quickly. When people feel their home or their resources are under threat, they're more likely to react aggressively. The key to avoiding these disputes is to set clear boundaries from the start. Have discussions with your neighbors or group members about where your land or resources end and theirs begin. Setting these boundaries early can help prevent misunderstandings later. But what do you do if someone does encroach on your territory? The most important thing is not to let the situation escalate right away. Instead of jumping to conclusions or reacting with hostility, try talking it out. Maybe it was a genuine mistake, or maybe they're desperate and looking for help. By keeping the lines of communication open, you can often resolve territorial disputes before they become dangerous. Dealing with conflict within your group is one thing, but what about outsiders? In a post-collapse world, you'll inevitably encounter people who aren't part of your group. Desperate neighbors, marauders, or even organized gangs. How you handle these encounters can determine whether you end up in a fight for survival or a cooperative relationship. The first step in managing conflict with outsiders is setting boundaries. If someone approaches your group, it's important to establish the terms of that interaction right away. Are they there to trade, to ask for help, or do they have more hostile intentions? By setting clear expectations, you reduce the chance of misunderstanding and potential conflict. However, some encounters will be hostile no matter how much you try to de-escalate. In these cases, having a plan in place is critical. Whether it's negotiating safe passage or defending your group, knowing how to handle conflict with outsiders should be part of your overall survival strategy. The goal is always to avoid unnecessary violence, but you should be prepared for the possibility that things could go south quickly. At this point, you might be wondering, what's the best way to de-escalate a situation before it turns violent? One of the most effective strategies is non-violent communication. This involves using language that reduces defensiveness and encourages cooperation rather than aggression. For example, instead of accusing someone of wrongdoing, you might say, "I noticed something and wanted to discuss it with you to see if we can find a solution." This approach lowers the emotional temperature and invites collaboration. Active listening is another powerful de-escalation tool. When people feel heard, they're less likely to escalate a conflict. If someone in your group is upset, take the time to really listen to their concerns. Even if you don't agree, acknowledging their feelings can diffuse a lot of the tension. You'd be surprised how many conflicts can be avoided simply by making someone feel understood. Body language plays a huge role in de-escalation as well. If you're tense, aggressive, or standing too close to someone, it sends a signal that you're ready for a fight. On the other hand, if you keep your posture open, maintain a neutral expression, and avoid aggressive gestures, you're more likely to calm the situation. Despite your best efforts, sometimes conflict is inevitable. If you find yourself in a situation where things are escalating and violence seems unavoidable, preparation is key. The first rule is to never be the aggressor unless absolutely necessary. Your goal should always be to defend yourself and your group, not to escalate the situation further. This can be difficult in the heat of the moment, but maintaining a defensive posture can prevent a bad situation from becoming worse. Another important consideration is knowing when to walk away. Sometimes retreating is the smartest option. If a conflict can't be resolved peacefully, and staying means putting yourself or your group in danger, it's better to back off and live to fight another day. Of course, this decision should be made carefully. You don't want your retreat to be seen as a weakness that invites further aggression. Conflict is unavoidable in a post-collapse world, but violence doesn't have to be. The key to surviving isn't just stockpiling food, water, and resources. It's about understanding the human element. The collapse of society strips away the rules we once relied on, and in that vacuum, emotional, psychological, and social dynamics can become the greatest threats to your survival. Recognizing the triggers that lead to conflict, whether it's fear, desperation, or mistrust, gives you the power to de-escalate dangerous situations before they boil over into violence. Throughout this video, we've explored how to handle resource scarcity, how to maintain trust within your group, and how to deal with outsiders who might see you as a target. We've talked about the importance of mental health, managing exhaustion, and how to plan for conflict before it arises. These skills are just as essential as knowing how to build a fire or defend your home, because in the end, survival is about more than just fighting for resources. It's about preventing the kind of chaos that could tear you and your community apart. Remember, every conflict avoided is a step towards safety. Every situation diffused without violence strengthens your position. The more prepared you are to handle these inevitable conflicts, the better chance you have of coming out of a crisis alive, with your resources, your group, and your sanity intact. Thank you for watching and being part of the Reliable Prepper community. If you found value in this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more vital survival strategies. Share this video with your community, because the more prepared we all are, the better chance we have of navigating whatever comes next. And make sure to follow us on Facebook for daily tips and exclusive content that you won't find anywhere else. Stay safe, stay prepared, and remember, when everything else falls apart, your ability to manage conflict might just be the most important skill of all.